Let me start off by saying digital dentures covers a broad spectrum of products in the lab. We're not just talking about a denture, we're talking about a partial denture, we're talking about a cast framework. So these processes have all changed in the lab. How we produce the product is what has changed fundamentally. The process results in a much more accurate product, a stronger product, and for the patient, a better fitting product. So a couple of years ago, what happened, the technology really caught up for the denture department. So removable prosthetics was always a little bit behind when it came to the technology. There just wasn't any kind of material that would allow us to do it, or the processes. And that changed, and it changed fairly rapidly. It started off with the software being ready to design partials, and from there materials became available that we could mold, that we could 3D print, and the processes have now allowed us to become digital. So in our denture department, every product is now manufactured digitally. So we take a partial denture from an intraoral scan or from a traditional impression that we pour the model. We then digitize that model and we create the product through a digital process. We have found that the products are stronger and at the same time they fit better. We have found that our remakes from an intraoral scan to the final partial have gone down from 8% did not fit to like 0.5%. So a huge difference. This results in savings in chair time to a dentist and less appointments for a patient. Let's talk about complete dentures. When you were dealing with a traditional process, which really hadn't changed over the last 50 years, what you found was you processed the denture from wax, you'd use the lost wax technique, you flossed, you then had to compress the floss to combat the shrinkage. This process really hadn't changed over years, so there was a certain amount of shrinkage of acrylic, and as you can imagine, that isn't as precise as milling from a pre-shrunk, highly condensed block or 3D printing through additive technology. What does this result in? The feedback from clinicians is that the amount of post-insert adjustments decreases tremendously. As a result, patients don't have to come back to the office as much. They find that they don't get as many sore spots. So that's a huge advantage when it comes to full dentures. What digital has allowed us to do in the lab is to take a lot of this data or this digital data, and what was once a very complex, difficult process for a technician, it becomes a lot more predictable and simplified through the use of software and through the use of technology. The process of using an intraoral scanner to take a complete full upper or full lower denture, it's not a recommended protocol just yet because of the compression of the tissue. How we combat that, or how we get around that, is we can use that still as a starting point. It's a great starting point. So the patient can still have the benefit of not having to have a custom conventional tray and PVS impression or alginate impression to then get the custom tray made. So you can use that as the starting point. We can then create a 3D try-in once you've taken the next impression, which is usually with us a couple of bite registration blocks and a solid base, which then allows you to, we 3D print that base as well, which then allows you to take your polyvinyl impression at the same time you're registering your bite. So that's the way we get around that. What we do find though is that if a patient has an existing denture, that is actually the easiest way to make a denture. You use a copy denture protocol, a polyvinyl impression is taken, and you register the opposing, you take a scan of the opposing arch, you register the centric bite, and from there we can actually copy that denture extremely precisely. You can get away without even doing a trine. We do recommend a trine as a precautionary step, just to make sure the patient's happy with the position of the teeth and the aesthetics, and from there we go to a complete denture. The patients do not love having impressions taken. If a patient's a gagger, having a custom tray with a whole bunch of impression material inserted into the mouth, and then some of it's going down the throat, and the patients just find that a intraoral scan is a better experience. From the lab perspective, the intraoral scan is far more accurate, and the amount of data that gets transferred to the lab is much more than just an impression. We get a very accurate bite, so the CR is very accurate, as well as the impressions are extremely accurate. So it starts off with an intraoral scan, and through the process, it just leads to a better product. So if we're talking about a partial denture, either an acrylic partial, a flexible partial, or a framework, a metal framework, the process is pretty much the same. A patient will come into the office, it will be determined what type of prosthesis the patient wants. From there you take your intraoral scans. What's really nice about the intraoral scan is that you get immediate feedback. So if you're looking at the impression on the screen and you see that there's areas that are required that are missing, the scanner gives you immediate feedback to complete those scans in that area. You take your bite reg, you send that to the lab, and from there we can go ahead and make the prosthesis, whatever prosthesis the patient wants, whether it be acrylic, flexible, or metal frame. The process in the lab, as I said, is almost 100% digital. So whether you send it in as an intraoral scan or whether you send in a conventional impression, we follow the same process. We way prefer the digital in and digital out. We just find that the accuracy from the intraoral scanner, the amount of information we get, it's definitely a better process. And as I mentioned before, we track remakes really closely in the laboratory. Obviously, remakes are not great for all of us, for the clinician, for the lab, and for the patient. And we see a huge reduction in remakes with an intraoral scan relative to a conventional impression. So all of our products follow that same process from the conventional to intraoral scan. We have been digital in metal frames for the last 9-10 years. What we used to do was 3D print the design of the frame. It gets designed digitally, 3D printed, and then it was cast the conventional way through the lost wax technique. Now we actually design the frame and it gets laser sintered, and from there it follows out. So it's completely digital in and digital out from an intraoral scan. What we're seeing now is a lot of changes when it comes to teeth. Everything was chosen off a tooth card. We're now milling from multi-layer PMMA, which a couple of advantages. We're not dealing with single teeth that get processed into the denture. We can bridge the teeth, which results in less breakage as well as less debonding from the partial. So that has been a game changer. The aesthetics have definitely caught up over a period of time with that. Additive technology, I think, is going to take over from milling over a period of time. Right now, additive technologies is missing some of the materials. The teeth that we're printing are just not there from an aesthetic point of view. They're mono, they're just not as aesthetic. So in a more economy-based denture, you can definitely use it, but we're just finding that for the higher end dentures, we are still using a milled multi-layer PMMA. So right now in our laboratory, we're able to 3D print a Lucitone 199 for dentures. We actually mill Ivoclar base dentures with teeth, That's a really efficient process right now, and that is the vast majority of our complete dentures are done that way. If we're dealing with cases that undercuts and especially with immediates are an issue, we 3D print those dentures and we use a multi-layer PMMA tube for that. So I think what separates us here at Protec is that we have so much experience with intraoral scans. As I said previously, we have 53% and growing monthly of our impressions coming in with digital scanners. So we've seen it all. We get scans from every type of scanner. We know how to deal with the process. We can also guide you as a clinician as to what's going to work and what's not going to work. So we have a team of experts set up here who can be on the phone with you while you have the patient in the chair, take a look at the impression and tell you if you're not 100% sure that the information that you are sending us is going to work for the prosthesis. We can also make the more complex things simpler because we've seen it all. So what might seem like a complex type of restoration or might seem a little bit overwhelming, how do I take this implant bridge and do it digitally? We have an easy solution for you and we can help you through that. We do more complex, we do from the easiest single crowns to the most complex chrome guided smile case, and we can guide you through the process. If you'd like any information, you could contact us at the lab. We have a team of people that can answer any of your questions. We have a digital intraoral scanning expert, Nash. Any questions you have about intraoral scanning, you can direct any inquiries to him. As well as at Protec, as I've said, we have experts in all the fields. If it's removable prosthetics, fixed, or orthodontics, you can speak to any one of us and we can help you. This is an exciting time in dentistry. If you think about it, where we were 10 years ago to where we are now has been a huge change. But what we're seeing now is that change is happening a lot quicker. Some people are intimidated by this, other people are excited by this. I happen to be one of those that are excited by the changes. I think the biggest advantage is that for the patient, the outcomes are going to be better. So the more complex cases are becoming far more predictable, and any clinician now is able to do something that would have been considered more difficult or only a specialist could do. I think you're finding that some GPs are able to do some of these more complex cases.